Gentlemen, and welcome back into another edition of Keytime Sports. Please like, comment, share, subscribe Keytime Sports on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe Key City Sports on Instagram. Also, go and follow my page on millions.co. I have finally opened up a page on millions.co. It's a sports company. So now let's get to the reason why we are all here and why we have tuned in. We got a college football game to talk about. It is college football week 0. It starts tomorrow and it starts at 12 a.m. noon Eastern Standard Time. Now there's 5 games on the list for this week when it comes to college football. The first game, everybody is going to be tuned in, so let's not waste any time, and I'm going to get right into the game. The first game we have is the Iowa State Cyclones versus the Kansas State Wildcats. Now, I'm going to pull up their statistics from last season, the Iowa State Cyclones, and their quarterback. They had two quarterbacks. They had R. Betch and they also had C. Moberly. And you can see with their stats what they did last season. Now, when it comes to the running game cracked over 2,000 yards as a whole unit, so that's good in and of itself. Also, the receiving core, and most of these players are returning for their third season with this team. So here's the wide receiving core. Here is the kicker for the Iowa State Cyclones. Here is the defense. When it comes to the Iowa State Cyclones, the defense, they had a really good season last year when it comes to tackling, but we all know how their season ended with Texas. Now, we are going to switch on over to the Kansas State Wildcats. Now, the Wildcats had a good season led by A. Johnson at quarterback. The Wildcats last year, they were one of those teams where they really couldn't turn the corner at the start of the season. Then when they got to the middle part, they started to gain ground, gain their footing. And before they won their bowl game last year. And now they came on strong at the end of the year and they want to take that momentum from what they had last season into this season. So here is their team leaders from last season at the quarterback position. They had a 3 QB system last year. Here is their running backs. They also cracked over 2,000 yards as a unit last year, which is always great. Always have the running game complement the passing game. Also, when it comes to the receivers, wide receiver core, they also cracked over 2,000 yards. So you had the main 3 units for the Kansas State Wildcats cracked over 2,000 yards in 2024. So most of these players are returning this season. So Kansas State, they are not going to miss a beat. I expect them to be able to navigate up and down the field tomorrow and score effectively. Here is their kicker, and here is their defense. Now, their defense was kind of suspect. The defense, they allowed over 300 yards of total offense to their opponents, and they also allowed over 30 points in 6 games last year. You're not going to be able to win very many games consistently when you are allowing over 30 points in a game. I don't care what type of level of football you are on. I don't care. So the defense in this case, you can see their defensive unit, everybody who contribute in the tackling category and also tackling as a whole as a defense, 732 tackles as a defensive unit in 2024. And when we get to their team statistics as a whole, this is another thing. This is something new that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to give you all of the players that are on the roster, and then I'm going to give you the key statistics to look out for. So for the Iowa State Cyclones in 2024, overall defense, they gave up over 400 yards passing, 416.2 yards per game, 39th in FBS. Passing yards, 255.7 yards per game, 39th. Rushing rushing yards, 160.5 yards per game, 70th. Scoring. Now, Iowa State Cyclones with their scoring, they were 41st, scored over 30 points per game, to be exact, 30.1. Overall defense. Now, this is what I've been saying. This is what I was saying earlier. Overall defense was suspect for both of these teams. They were suspect. 343.9 yards per game. That's where all of these shootouts gonna come from. All of these offensive shootouts. Passing yards allowed first in America. So 165 yard 165.6 yards allowed per game, which is first. Rushing 188.4 allowed per game, 109th in the college football. Scoring 22.9 points allowed per game. But one thing I can say, when you're putting up as many points and giving up as many points as you're putting up, you are going to get in trouble somewhere. And for Iowa State, overall offense. I just read that. Now we shift over to Kansas State. Kansas State overall offense, this is why I say Kansas State was one of the top offenses in college football last season. Overall offense, 426.8 yards per game, which is 31st in FBS. Passing yards, 211.4 yards per game, which was 85th in college football last season. Rushing attack, 215.5 yards per game last season, which was 11th. Scoring, 30.8 points per game, which was 46th last season in college football. Overall defense for Kansas was down the drain. It really was down the drain. Can the Kansas State defense, can they defend in this game versus the Iowa State Cyclones? Now, the Cyclones, the running back they had last season, he went to the NFL. Cam Scatterboo, he's not going to be there. So they might have a chance when it comes to defending the running game tomorrow. Now, as far as rushing for the Kansas State Wildcats, 118 yards, 118.7 yards allowed per game, which was 28th in college football last year. Scoring, 23.4 points allowed per game, which was 50th. So defensively, they had flashes. Defensively, Kansas State had flashes, but I just don't know when it comes to a game like this, and defense, it might be at a premium in this game. That's what I see, that it might be a premium. Now, obviously, these statistics don't have no factor in the game tomorrow, because tomorrow starts a new season. We're just going back off of past statistics from last season. Now, here were the team leaders for the Iowa State Cyclones: Rico Betch, Carson Hansen for the receiving, Chase Sowell for the Kansas State Wildcats, passing Avery Johnson, rushing Dylan Edwards, receiving Jace Brown. Now, one thing about this, I can see this game being a shootout already. Both teams going up and down the field, but I believe that at the end of this game, there will be a couple of defensive plays that will determine the outcome for one of these teams. Now, currently, as far as the odds on this game, it is Kansas State is a 3-point favorite. I don't know. Las Vegas, they don't have much confidence in the Iowa State Cyclones with the subtraction of Cam Scatterboo and their quarterback from last season. They might have trouble early in the game, and they might have trouble throughout the entirety of the game when it comes to trying to defend Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards, because the run defense for the Iowa State Cyclones last year was not their strongest suit. So who do I have winning this game, you might ask? I have the Kansas State Wildcats starting off 1-0 after this game, because I just don't see where there's a lot of questions at the running back position coming out of Iowa Cyclones camp. They had fall camp just now, and also throughout the summer, they've tried to fill the void of the running back position, but I don't think you're going to be able to fill the running back position, because Cam Scatterboo last year, he was a man amongst boys when it comes to running the football. Did you all see him in the playoffs? Especially, and I do mean especially, against Texas. I mean, he had 200 yards rushing against Texas, which was one of the best defenses in college football last season. So I have Kansas State winning the game tomorrow, and this game is in Ireland. And Ireland, I can say that over the last couple of years since I started this show, Ireland, I've been receiving viewership from Ireland. So thank you to Ireland for watching this show so faithfully. And I am always excited to start the season off in Ireland, covering a game in Ireland. So I have the Kansas State Wildcats winning this game. I believe they cover. They are going to cover. They are going to win this game by 3 points or a touchdown, because this game is going to be a shootout, America. I can already see it being 41-38, 35-38, 35-32, somewhere along those lines. But that's all I got to say for the Iowa State Cyclones and the Kansas State Wildcats game. The next game I am going to talk about is the Idaho State Bengals and the UNLV Rebels. Now, Idaho State, they did not have the particular, top-notch season that everybody was hoping for, because they're a group of five school. And we all know that those group of five schools, you can get easy wins against them. But don't tell Notre Dame that, because Notre Dame, they wet the bed last year facing NIU. Nobody knew who NIU was until NIU whooped Notre Dame last season. But that's nor here nor there. Idaho State Bengals, their player statistics. You have Kay Tracy, who had over 300 yards last year when it comes to passing. And they had so many quarterbacks on the list last year. I mean, carrying 4 quarterbacks on your opening day roster, that is too much for college football. That's the limit in NFL. So wide receivers, they also had a couple of package plays. You can see A. Watts and M. Shilovo. Also, he threw a couple passes. Here is their rushing game. And their rushing game was non-existent. You can see it right here. I mean, I mean, you had 500 yards from Brooks. You had 359 yards from Kalui, and then you had 224 yards from Hayes, 199 yards from Austin, and then you see on top of this, there's no consistency. It's like you have Brooks start off with 500 yards, and then it's just dropping, 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 and dropping. Now, one thing about the Idaho State Bengals. Now nobody is really going to watch this game. Let's just be serious right now. Most people are going to be watching that first game, which is in Ireland. All of these games that I am talking about right now after the Ireland game, it will fall by the wayside. That is the only reason why I'm covering the Ireland game tomorrow. And that's it. That's it. So all of this is just more content for the eye and more content for the ear that likes to watch and listen to me on YouTube. So back to what I was saying. Idaho State Bengals wide receiver core, same with their running backs. They started off well, and then all of a sudden everybody, as far as production, it started dropping. And that is why when it comes to those group of five schools, they can't survive when you face somebody in the Pac-12, Big Ten, SEC, ACC. And we already know when it comes to the SEC, we know the SEC, that is where college football starts. I'm going to do a paper pop because this has gotten serious. Now, one thing about the kicking. Now, the Bengals, they had an efficient kicker last year. At times, that was their only offense. Defensively, pretty much non existent. It seems like they were at the bottom of the barrel for most of the year. And you can already see where, when it comes to their defense, you had one guy with 92 tackles, then 74, then 67, 52, 47, 39. There's no consistency when it comes to the Idaho State Bengals. And there's not going to be consistency when it comes to the Bengals this year. And I know there are most people that are wondering what Bengals team I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Idaho State Bengals. But I also am talking about the Cincinnati Bengals because we know that their defense is putrid. Now, one thing, I'm going to shift on over to the next team, the UNLV Rebels. Now, the UNLV Rebels, they played in the Big 12 championship game last year against Boise State, and they lost. Now, one thing, when it comes to the UNLV Rebels, they had a chance at making the college football playoff, but that loss to Boise State really ruined their chances. Now, here is their passing. As far as quarterbacks, you had the punter and you also had the wide receiver throw a few passes last year. And their passing game as a unit cracked over 2,000 yards, which is great. The running game, UNLV is always and has always been a run first team. You can see it when it comes to these statistics. They cracked almost 3,000 yards, over 3,000 yards. And UNLV this year is going to be a running team again. Receiving cracked over 2,000 yards as a unit, which is great. But when it comes to, they had one guy with over 1,000 yards, and then everybody else, they had 500 yards or less. Now, there is no problem with having a top-notch player on your team, but a top-notch player is going to have most of the attention when it comes to opponents playing against you all. Yes, opponents playing against a certain team. That's why I say when it comes to R. White the third, he is their best wide receiver, but you can see when it comes to opponents later on in the season, They already know that this is their top guy. They are going to try and neutralize and shut him down to make the quarterback go to another wide receiver or another tight end. So having one guy as your best player is not the way to go in this day and time. You need at least 3 to 4 dominant wide receivers and tight ends that is on the field. That way, the defense doesn't know who to guard, who to pay attention to. So UNLV, hey, I'm putting my coach's cap on. UNLV, please diversify your offense and expand the playbook this season, because running the football for over 200 yards, you're not going to be able to do that every game. Now, their kicker, they had a 2-kicker system last year. They were both efficient. Here is their defense, UNLV's defense. Their defense was pretty much inconsistent last year. You can see it when it comes to total tackles for each individual player. Now, I'm at the end of this game. Most of this game is supposed to be a blowout. You see that they didn't even give out any statistics. So you already know that this game is going to be a blowout. Currently, the UNLV Rebels are a 26.5-point favorite. For all my betting men and women out there, you are going to receive a good payday with this game. If you bet $6,000, you get $6,000. And also, one other thing. This game, I don't expect this game to be close. If the point spread is over 20, I don't expect it to be close. I would say by the time the end of the first quarter comes, I think that the UNLV Rebels will have a 14 to 21 point lead, because Idaho State, they are not going to be able to stop UNLV. I don't care how putrid or pessimistic most people are when it comes to their running game, but UNLV, they are going to start off the season 1-0. So the next game I am going to cover is the Fresno State Bulldogs and the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, Fresno State, another team that could have went to the college football playoff, but didn't. Here is their quarterbacks. They had a 3-quarterback system, and they also had a wide receiver throw a couple of passes for them last season. As a passing unit for the Fresno State Bulldogs, they cracked over 3,000 passing yards as a unit. I always say that's a plus. You have a dominant passing attack when you can crack over 3,000 yards. Rushing attack cracked over 1,000 yards. It's always good to have a good running game to complement a passing game. Receiving cracked over 1,000 yards as well. One thing I can say, when you have as far as passing, receiving, and you also have a running game that can at least crack over 1,000 yards, you have a dynamic offense. Not to mention the kicker. The kicker, very efficient. On extra points last season, he was 100%. On field goals, he was 97%. So that is efficient. The defense for the Fresno State Bulldogs pretty much was decent. It was out of T. Nomomora. You didn't have anybody crack triple digits when it comes to total tackles. And you can see where the disparity when it comes to later on in this list. As a defensive unit, they had 887 tackles as a defensive unit. Now, let's shift on over to the Kansas Jayhawks. First in the Big 12 last season, ended on a high note. They beat Colorado, then they went on ahead and they won their bowl game. Now, one thing, the Kansas Jayhawks, I believe the Kansas Jayhawks, they are going to take a step back this year. I do believe that. Now, I see where Jalen Daniels is the quarterback. He is returning for his third season with the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, one thing, Kansas Jayhawks, they are going to make games interesting, but they have a tough schedule. And starting off the season with Fresno State, and Fresno State is no slouch either. This game could go either way. I could see this game being a offensive shootout or a defensive slugfest. That's what I see. Now, when it comes to the rushing attack for the Kansas Jayhawks, they cracked over 2,000 yards as a unit last season, which is always good. Receiving cracked over 2,000 yards as a unit for the receiving corps. The kicker, they had a two-kicker system. Well, excuse me, they had just one kicker, and he was very efficient. He was 95% for extra points, and also for field goals, he was 80%. Now, 80% when it comes to field goals, that is, I'm going to say that's decent. It could be better. It could be. But you don't want your season to come down to a field goal and you have your kicker that has trouble making field goals on a consistent basis. Defensively for the Kansas Jayhawks, they were decent last year, but 5 games last year they allowed over 30 points. So their defense is a little shaky. Most of these starters are returning for this season. Let's see if the Kansas Jayhawks can be better on defense. And as you can see, tackles as a unit individually, Jay Brown was the only guy that had 74 tackles. Everybody else had 64 and under. Now, who do I have winning this game? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that are asking that question. First off, before I get to the game, I'm going to show you all key statistics for this game tomorrow. Fresno State, 2024 Fresno State Bulldogs, here are their key statistics. Overall offensive yards per game was 340.6 yards per game, which was 106 in FBS. Passing yards, 242.5 yards per game, which was 46 in college football. Rushing yards, 98.2 rushing yards per game, 123rd in college football last season, scoring 26.1 points per game, which was 81st last season in college football. Overall defense, this is where I have the problem when it comes to the Kansas Jayhawks defense. You're allowing over 300 yards on defense. 355.6 yards allowed per game was 52nd in FBS in college football last season. Passing yards, 216.2 yards allowed per game as far as defense, which was 62nd in college football. Rushing defense, 139.4 yards allowed per game, 65th in college football. And that is it for the Fresno State Bulldogs. Now, the Kansas Jayhawks. This is why I say this game might be an offensive shootout or it might just be a defensive slugfest. Kansas Jayhawks key statistics. Overall offense cracked over 400 yards on average last season, which was 37th in college football. Passing yards, 208.8 yards per game, 90th in college football. Rushing yards, 211.4 rushing yards per game, which was 13th in college football. Scoring, 29.7 points per game, which was 52nd in college football last season. Overall defense, 392.6 yards allowed per game last season, which was 92nd in college football. Passing yards, 239.1 yards allowed per game, which was 103rd in college football last season. Rushing yards, 153.5 yards allowed per game, which was 75th last year in college football. Also, 26 points allowed per game, which was also 75th in college football last season. And that is for the Kansas Jayhawks team as a whole. Here are their team leaders for the Fresno State Bulldogs. Passing, E.J. Warner, 2,710 yards. Rushing, Bryson Danielson, 462 yards. Receiving, Josiah Ion, 651 yards. Kansas, their team leaders for last season, Jalen Daniels, 2,454 yards. Daniel Heishall Jr., 376 yards. Receiving, Bryson Canty, 760 yards. Now, one thing I can say about this game is going to be interesting. Now, I'm not going to say that this game is going to have an effect on the college football playoff because it's way too early in the season to be talking about that. This is only college football week 0. When we start playing next week, the real colleges will be playing the top dogs. Then we can start talking about the college football playoff. But now, this game, I can see Kansas State winning this game because not Kansas State. The Kansas Jayhawks are a 13.5 point favorite. As I was watching the point spread this morning, it fluctuates up and down, and as of right now, it is 9:32 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So now, as of right now, currently, it is at 13.5 points for the Kansas Jayhawks. The next game I am going to cover is Sam Houston and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Now, for Sam Houston, last season, we all know that they are a group of 5 schools, so nobody is really paying attention to them after the first game of the season. So I'm just going to do a rough estimate. You can see that their passing as a unit cracked over 2,000 yards. Rushing attack cracked over 2,000 yards for Sam Houston. And also their receiving core cracked over 2,000 yards. Now, one thing, they are very consistent. Sam Houston is very consistent when they play their conference. But when they play out of conference, they do not have a chance. You don't want to have a team like, I'm just going to go on ahead and say this. You don't want a team like Texas playing Sam Houston because you already know that game is going to end up 62-3 or 62-10. And nobody wants to be watching blowouts in college football throughout the entirety of this season. So as far as the kicker, when it comes to Sam Houston, kicker was efficient. Extra points, he didn't miss an extra point. He didn't miss a field goal. He was 100% with extra points and 100% with field goals. So I'm not concerned about their kicking game. Defensively, nobody cracked 100 tackles last season. So it's pretty bleak when you look at Sam Houston. After the first 2 games of any season since I've been doing this show, you don't hear much from them until early in the following season. Sam Houston You got a tough schedule. You do. You have a tough schedule. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go to it because you are in the CUSA conference. You got a tough schedule. I mean, Western Kentucky, UNLV, and I just went over UNLV when it comes to their roster. Then you have Hawaii. You got Texas. Good luck with Texas. You have New Mexico State. New Mexico State has given you problems over the past couple of years. Then you have Jacksonville State, also another game that is going to be tough. UTEP, another game that's going to be tough. Louisiana Tech, another game that's going to be tough. Oregon State, another game that's going to be tough. So Sam Houston, they have, I'm going to say, out of their 12 game schedule, 3/4 of the schedule, they have tough teams on their schedule. And Western Kentucky is a tough team that is on their schedule. Now I'm going to go back to their statistics as far as a defense. When it comes to defense, they had so many missed tackles last season. It was not funny. It was not funny. So, Sam Houston, tough sledding this season for you. I just want to see come back to me after week 4. No, after come back to Sam Houston fans. Come back to me after week 5 when you get your brakes beat off when it comes to those Longhorns. Okay, Western Kentucky Hilltoppers are next. Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Their passing attack cracked over 3,000 yards as a unit last season. That's good when it comes to their passing attack. Their rushing attack only cracked over 1,000 yards last season. So the running game was relatively non-existent outside of E. Young, J. Hart III, C. Velp Camp. Outside of that, it was non-existent. For the receiving core, cracked over 3,000 yards as a unit. So we know that the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers are a pass-dominant team. Here is their kicker, Leonardo El Carnerio. That's his name, El Carnerio. Now I'm gonna try and keep track of that name this season. El Carnerio was efficient on extra points last season and field goals. He made 100% of his extra points and field goals. So I'm not too concerned when it comes to their kicking. Defensively, nobody cracked 100 tackles last season for Western Kentucky. I am a little concerned about Western Kentucky's defense as a whole. Because this team, they can get blown out or they can blow someone else out. One thing I can say, this game as a whole, now this game is one of the games that is on the docket for this week where this game could go either way. And you can see the matchup predictor right now. Western Kentucky has a 51.6% chance at winning this game. Sam Houston has a 48.4% chance at winning this game, according to ESPN Analytics. If I was a betting man when it comes to this game, this is basically a pick'em game. I would stay away from this game if I was a betting man because you don't know who is going to win this game since the point spread and the matchup predictor margin is so close. But one thing I can say who is going to win this game, I'm going to say Western Kentucky. And I'm going to say Western Kentucky by 10 points because I'm not confident in what Sam Houston has to offer. I'm not confident in their product. I'm not confident in their quarterback or their running backs as a whole. So Western Kentucky, you are going to start off the season 1-0, and now only thing you have to do is go out there and prove all of these predictors, and you have to prove Las Vegas right. You do. You have to prove Las Vegas right. So the next game I'm going to cover and the final game I'm going to cover for week 0 is the Stanford Cardinal and the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. This has been a good show, America. We are over 40 minutes as far as when it comes to this show. Please, please, please keep liking, comment, share, subscribe to Keytime Sports. It helps out the algorithm. And go and follow Key City Sports on Instagram. It also helps out the algorithm. Also, please do not forget my sports page on millions.co. We also have interviews lined up, player interviews lined up, but that is going to be a little bit towards in the immediate future. So a lot of new things are happening on Keytime Sports this season. Now let me get back to the Stanford Cardinal and the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Stanford Cardinal last year had 2,000 yards as a passing unit, which is good. Also, rushing attack. Now, their rushing attack was a little bit suspect last year. Wasn't consistent. You have 7 players on this list that have single digits in yards per carry. Receiving for the Stanford Cardinal, over 2,000 yards. Also, kicking for the Stanford Cardinal, you have one of the most efficient kickers in college football. Extra points, he made every extra point. He was 100%. When it comes to field goals, he was 14 of 17 for 82%. One thing about that, when I see a percentage like that when it comes to field goals, I'm a little bit skeptical. Because can you depend on your kicker to win you a game if it comes down to his leg? Who knows? He may make it and he might miss it. So, Stanford Cardinal, I'm going to be watching out for your kicking situation because you might have to change kickers throughout this season. Defensively, for the Stanford Cardinal, nobody cracked 90 total tackles on this list as far as players individually. Nobody cracked 90 tackles, which is a shame. And tackles as a whole, 759 tackles as a whole for the defensive unit of the Stanford Cardinal. But Hawaii, and I do mean Hawaii, it is not much better when it comes to Hawaii. The Hawaii Rainbows. They were ranked one time last season, so they're showing progress in Hawaii. Hawaii is a great vacation place. When it comes to their football team, college football team, I see a whole lot of improvement. Passing as a unit, 3,000 yards. So they're doing something. Rushing attack, slightly over 1,000 yards when it comes to rushing. Receiving, 3,000 yards, over 3,000 yards. Their kicker, Keiwond Dowell. He was efficient when it comes to extra points, 32 of 32, 100%. Field goals, 12 of 16 for 75%. Another thing, he was not consistent when it comes to making field goals. He missed some critical field goals down the stretch last season. Hopefully he can improve because there are some games that the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors will have to depend on their kicker because this team, as far as a defense, you can see that they don't emphasize defense. The best, and I do mean their best player on defense, only had 55 tackles last season. And it's hard to believe that a team that is so good in their conference, you only have your top-notch defensive player only have 55 tackles, and total tackles as a unit 742 total tackles, and that is a shocker in and of itself. If there's only one guy on my defense that has only 55 tackles, I'm expecting for the defense as a whole to only have 400 total tackles throughout the season. But I was surprised at the number that I just saw. Now let me get to key statistics and my final take for college football week 1. College football week 1. So, Stanford visits Hawaii on Saturday, week 0 matchup. Key statistics for the Stanford Cardinal last season. Overall offense, they averaged over 300 yards per game, 323.9 yards per game, 120th in college football. Passing, 191.3 yards, which was 105th in college football last season. Rushing, 132.7 yards per game, which was 93rd in college football last season. Scoring, 22.8 per game last season, which was 106th in college football last season. Overall defense, Stanford, the defense was awful last year. 414.1 yards allowed per game last season for 107th in the FBS in college football last season. Passing yards, 280.6 passing yards, which was 130th in college football last season. A lot of defense. A lot of defense. Scoring, 33.7 points allowed per game, which was 115th in college football. The defense was awful for the Stanford Cardinal. Hawaii, offense, overall offense, 365.8 yards per game, which was 89th in college football last season. Passing yards, 268.2 passing yards, which was 23rd in college football last season. Rushing, 97.7 yards per game last season, which was 124th in college football last season. Scoring, 22.3 points per game, which was 111th last season in college football. Overall offense, like I said, bad defenses on both sides. 376.9 yards allowed per game last season, which was 75th in college football last season. Passing, 211.3 yards per game last season, which was 49th in college football. Rushing, 165.7 yards allowed per game last season, which was 92nd for the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Scoring, 26 points allowed per game, tied for 75th in last season's rankings when it comes to the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Now, team leaders for Stanford and Hawaii. Passing, Ben Branson. Passing, Micah Ford, 309 yards. Receiving, Caden High, 908 yards. Hawaii, passing Micah Aljado, 585 yards. Rushing, Landon Sims, 351 yards and a TD. Receiving, Nick Senekal, 721 yards, 6 touchdowns. Now, who do I think is going to win this game? We are at the final point in the show. I'm going to give you all the point spreads for all of these games. Now, for Iowa State and Kansas State, the point spread is three points for Kansas State. I think Kansas State is going to win this game. UNLV and Sam Houston, 26.5 point favorite for UNLV. I think that UNLV will make this a blowout before halftime. The game will be over before halftime. Now, KU, Fresno State versus Kansas Jayhawks, they are a 13-point favorite. It just went down. It was 13 and a half 20 minutes ago. Now it is 13. I think the Kansas Jayhawks will cover this game and will win this game. The Western Kentucky Hilltoppers versus Sam Houston, 10.5 point favorite. Western Kentucky will win this game. And the last game that I just covered, Stanford Cardinal and Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Hawaii is a 2.5 point favorite. I think Hawaii will win this game going away, even though that this game could be an offensive shootout. It is what we all have been waiting for. College football is back, America. College football is back, and we are going to kick off the college football season in Avia Stadium, Dublin, Ireland, tomorrow at 12 noon. And the games where you can watch this is on ESPN, Iowa State, and Kansas State. That is the big game of the day for tomorrow. And with that, those are my predictions for 2025 College Football Week 0. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, click the notification bell to get notified of all of my reaction videos, shows, and other content. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to Keytime Sports on YouTube. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to Key City Sports on Instagram. Also, go and follow my sports page on millions.co. Also, we have some interviews, some future interviews lined up, so you do not want to miss anything that I have in store. Thank you to everybody that watches the show faithfully every day. Please make sure to notify your friends, family, your co-workers, anybody. Tell them that Keytime Sports is the man and the name that you want to be looking for the ultimate sports content. And one last thing, everybody, remember, the key is always on time.